All right. Well, let's start with your why. Like why you've done sports all your life. Why? What's your why for doing those? And also, I know you're doing coaching as well. So, what's your why for the coaching side of things?
So my why really when I first got involved in Hyrox was very much around we kind of just came out of COVID. I kind of felt like I needed something to train for. I just for me, I always kind of like to have a goal to aim for. So I actually first did my first Hyrox event. It was Birmingham 2021. So that was my first one. And I remember entering with only like 6 weeks before it, and just thinking, oh, I just need a bit of focus in the gym, something to do. I've always been a personal trainer. I've been a personal trainer for the last 20 years. So I just felt like I needed something for me coming out of the COVID slump. So that was kind of my why during my first year. And then my why kind of developed kind of with each season as I kind of went from open to pro to elite. Kind of when I decided to try and be an elite athlete, it was very much kind of turned into a why not me? Because that first season, I didn't really feel like a proper athlete. I'm a mum of two. I run my own business. I feel like I was an athlete when I was younger, when I was a gymnast, but now as an adult, it was almost like this is just a hobby, and I'm just here kind of to show up and just enjoy it really. So my why definitely changed throughout each season. And then it very much developed into well, let's see how far this can go, and kind of accept myself as an athlete now. I can be all these other things, but actually I can also be an athlete at 37 if I wanted to be. So now I'm going into my fourth season. Yeah, this will be the fourth season as a coach. So I'm very excited now to have the opportunity to actually kind of share with all my learnings over the last 3 years with the athletes and support them in accomplishing their whys. So I think it's definitely been a change throughout the last 4 years or 3 years.
Yeah. Did you continue to, as you evolved and like were competing to be in the elites? Did you continue to enjoy it? Was that
Yeah,
yeah?
absolutely, I did. Yeah, I think for me, I very much in the mindset of I get to do this. It's a choice. Like nobody's making me do this. And I always stood on that start line with a lot of gratitude. I think from being a gymnast, when I was an elite gymnast, I kind of got sucked in and was in it for so many years. I did lose a lot of the love for competing in sport, and it did feel, especially towards the end, like I'm done with this. I'm so over this. I've done it for 10 years now, and it's been a lot. Whereas with Hyrox, it was very much I'm choosing. Nobody's making me do this. I'm doing this because I want to do this. I want to put the time and the effort in, and it was a very different switch. And I also feel that I knew there was going to be a time limit on this because of my injuries that I picked up as a gymnast, especially my knee injury. I was first diagnosed with a knee condition when I was 15. Really, I probably shouldn't have even started Hyrox just with it the running side of things, but I didn't expect to do as well as I did, and so I knew that when I stood on that start line, it was very much, this might be my last race, so I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to make the most of it. So I think for Hyrox, feel very lucky to have got 3 years out of being involved and to get to the level that I did.
Yeah. I realised the other day because that Birmingham event in 21 was my first event as well. Actually, I realised it was exactly 3 years.
Yeah.
Like last week, I think it was, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was that I got a memory come up on the old time hop to say 3 years ago. Yeah, wow. But it feels like a lot longer. 3 years
Yeah.
is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
No, I just thought that when you said like you've done like gymnastics for like 10 years, and it feels to me like I've done Hyrox for ages, and I
Yeah.
should be fitter by now, and I should be much better. But 3 years in the scheme of things, like compared to I played football for like 30 years,
Yeah.
it's nothing. Yeah.
No.
Um. So injury wise, where are you at? Can you just like give us a bit of an update? And obviously, we're recording this just over a week after the Amsterdam major, which you had effectively qualified for, but competing is no more, is it, in Hyrox?
No, no, absolutely not. Unfortunately, no. I was told pretty much kind of springtime that I've got osteoarthritis in my knee. When I was 15, I was actually diagnosed with a condition called osteochondritis. And I never really fully recovered from that, just through the severity of it and being involved in high level sports from such a young age. And it settled down quite a bit and it recovered. But it's led to osteoarthritis. And basically, I've been under consultant care throughout my Hyrox career and been managing it. In January this year, I was just out going on the normal long run that we all do, those steady zone twos. And I remember just feeling something kind of pop almost in my knee. And I got back home and it was really swollen. And I went to see the consultant, and they just said there and then that we can try and get you to the Worlds, because I'd qualified for the Elite Worlds race. We'll try and do all we can really to get you 4 months down the line. But after that, like you need to just kind of take a step back. It's the running side things, that constant pounding. Obviously, I want to keep the joint as strong as possible, but just the running side of things is just not good. I've got complete cartilage loss throughout my knee now. I basically need a new knee, but I'm at 38, a little bit too young to kind of have one right now. So I wear a knee brace at the minute. I've started to implement some strength training nice and steadily. I can cycle, I can walk, I can row, I can ski, but I just can't run. And obviously it's been incredibly painful really over the last 6 months, but I'm at a lot better place now, just from resting it and really kind of taking a step back. Obviously I didn't get to the Worlds. It was just really, it was just too much to ask. So that was why we had a step back. But it's crazy to think that kind of I competed in Stockholm in December last year. I got my best ever race, and that was my last race. So obviously it was a really good one to go out of. I got 5th in the world, which probably looking at the competition now was as far as I was ever really going to get. So that was I'm glad that I managed to get that. But almost within the space of 6 weeks, I'd gone from racing at the highest standard to not being able to walk, and then obviously then it went really downhill after that. But no, right now we're at a much better place. And yeah, well, like we just said, 3 years ago I'd only just started training for Hyrox, and 3 years down the line, look kind of how that snowballed. Never know what's going to happen in the next 3 years. Can't see me ever racing again at an elite level, but you just don't know what sports are going to come through. So I'm always open to new opportunities and new things. I think I've managed to do gymnastics at a high level. Hyrox, I did the OTR World Championships. I was invited to do the DECA. I qualified for them. Obviously, I won't be there in December, but there's always something around the corner.
Yeah. You just need like a Hyrox with cycling instead of running, and
the swimming one.
Yeah. Was it hard, like retiring? Like you seem like you're in a good place, but was it hard?
I do. Like I said, I kind of feel like I knew it was always coming. And that's why I was always felt I love racing and competing and being able. I always felt I get to do this, and I know there is going to be a time limit on it. I feel though that this year was the right transition year, because obviously it's been quite smooth really. Obviously I took a step back from racing myself, which has now allowed me to work with more athletes. And that happened just after the World Championship. So I was able to then work with a really strong group of athletes throughout off season, and now they're starting their season. And so it definitely has felt like a good transition, that I've not really gone away. I'm still here, just because I'm not stood on the start line. I'm still going to be there. I'm really excited to go to Birmingham and support them. So I'm very much still around. It's just I'm not racing myself.
Yeah. I appreciate you were like high level gymnast when you were younger, and maybe this is just like injuries is like a byproduct of that. Like, is there anything you wish you'd done differently in the past that could help prevent this, or is it just?
Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Gymnastics, sorry, or any sport really is very much about trying to manage the load and being as healthy as you can, and injuries are very much part of the process, and I pretty much dealt with some sort of injury since the age of 6. I had growth plate issues when I was younger in my heels, in my elbows, in my wrists, and that was just from the impact through being a high level gymnast and training hours that you do at such a young age. So you learn very quickly that it is very much part of the process. I suppose, especially with my knee, I actually started having a knee niggle when I was 13, and it took me 2 years to actually go and get it proper looked at. I suppose I knew there was something up, but it's a very competitive world, and I just didn't feel like I would ever have time for proper injuries. And you're always kind of looking towards the next goal, and you've got a competition. And I mean, I first started competing for Great Britain when I was 9, which is really young. So you're almost against the clock, especially as a female gymnast. And when I was competing then, by the age of 18, that's it. Like, that's your sport done. Whereas now it is going on a lot longer, and they're managing health and injuries a lot better now. There's a lot more external support to try and keep gymnasts and athletes in sports for a longer period of time. But obviously, when I was around, that wasn't the case. At 18, that was kind of your career done. So potentially, maybe if I'd kind of said, "Oh, I'm struggling with a knee injury for a couple of years before I actually did flag it up," maybe I could have got on top of it a little bit quicker. But my dad, my granddad both got knee issues. They both got new knees, so you've got that genetic side of things that's going to creep in. Our family seems to have that issue, so it swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really? I think I was always going to have an issue with my knees. It's just I've, like the surgeon said who I work with, who says you've just put too much mileage through it in such a short space of time.
Yeah. Completely off Hyrox topic, but how good is Simone Biles from
Oh,
some?
amazing. Yeah. She is just that next level, that she is one of the greatest all-round athletes, and just what she stands for as well, not this Olympics, but the previous Olympics, just taking a step back and saying, I'm not in a good place, I'm not going to sacrifice my own health and wellness to compete just because I might get the chance of being another Olympian. And she came back 4 years on and absolutely smashed it. Yeah, that's just progress, isn't it? That in
Yeah,
sport.
yeah. What's your best memory in Hyrox?
My best memory in Hyrox, it's got to be the Las Vegas World Championships. I'd only just that was my first season, and I certainly didn't feel like an athlete at that point. Well, like many, I suppose, mums kind of feel a little bit of guilt to start with. When I first started training for Hyrox, it's almost like, why am I taking this time for myself to go and do something for me, when really shouldn't I be kind of running my business, be at home, looking after the kids, spending more time with them? So I definitely feel like when I stood on the podium as world champion in Vegas, it was a very pivotal moment for me. I kind of felt like, you know what, Beck, you can be an athlete, you can be all these other things. And if you want to do this, then why not do it? I remember watching the Elite 15 that night as well and thinking, oh my goodness, just they're amazing. Like, just to be a little bit at their level would be insane. It was the championships that Chris won out the blue. And I remember watching them, and they were also like fast and strong and incredible. And I thought, you know what? If I actually dedicate some time to this properly and go all in, it was a very conscious decision that summer, going from pro at Worlds at Vegas to then competing the next season and going after trying to get as far as I could. And I remember writing in my training diary going into that new season, like the road to the Elite 15. That was like the title that I wrote in. And every session that I did that season, I wrote in this book. And at the back, I put like my goals that I wanted to achieve. I'd only ever ran 2 pro races at that time, but it was things like, I want to hit this time. I want to run a 105. I want to hold the British record. I want to be world champion again. And I want to race the Elite 15, all just like crazy stuff that I didn't think actually might happen. But, I put it out there and I wrote it down. But I was only at a result of being in Vegas and being part of that community. And I finally felt like I was part of something good. I met so many people when we were out there and who are friends now, like 3 or 4 years on, I speak to most weeks. And that was a big change for me, that time there.
Yeah. At that point, what did, like, I appreciate, like you said it as a goal, what did going all in look like? Was it just the training was ramped up in terms of volume?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was everything really. It was being honest with myself. It was being honest with Stuart, my partner, my kids, my family, my friends, my work. Because I knew what an athlete looked like when I was a gymnast, I kind of had the experience of what all in means. And it means that things are non-negotiable. So it's right, you've got to get 2 training sessions in a day. So that means your first training session needs to be at 5:30 a.m. in the morning so that you are home to get the kids ready for school, take them to school, be at work at 9 o'clock. And then your second training session is going to be at lunchtime. But around that, what's your nutrition looking like? Your bedtime's at 9:30. It's saying no to things at the weekends. It's, if I'm going to compete, then I need some race experience. So it's paying money out to go and do the races. It's getting a coach. It's Hyrox is now here and everything else is filtering down. Whereas the previous season, it was kids, work, family, social life, Hyrox training. That was it. Things needed to switch. And I needed to make sure that everybody else was on board with that too, because when I was a gymnast, it was just me. I was young and I didn't have to work. I was part of the National Lottery funding. So we were paid to do gymnastics. We were paid, travel was paid, that was my living. Whereas Hyrox wasn't. And I needed to make sure that everybody else was on board with me with it. And thankfully they were. They understood. They wanted to see. They wanted to also see how far I could go. So yeah, it was that summer really was like a big switch. And I think as well as a motivator and as a why, it was very much, if I'm doing this, then I need to be all in on it. And my why is, everybody else is making sacrifices for me as well. So yeah, it was very much mindset switch over. My training didn't change too much, but everything else around it did.
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually how, if you felt gymnastics set you up well for coming into Hyrox, and in what ways. And it sounds like the appreciation of being at a very high level it was part of that. Do you feel like there's anything else that played a part?
No, well, I think just knowing how important you're prioritizing recovery and your food, and getting people around you on board, and very much a mindset as well. It was very much like, I am an athlete now, and I need to act and show up like an athlete. And it was, and also just the love for racing and competition, like very much see the training as the hard bit, and actually the racing and the competition is the easy bit. I mean, as a gymnast, I used to have to stand on a world stage and perform multiple flips on a 4-inch beam. And I often said to myself when I was stood on a Hyrox start line, I can run around a circle 16 times and do 8 things. I'm at floor level. It's good to put things into perspective based on what you've previously done, and that helped me kind of keep my calm and keep that focus.
Yeah, you've talked to me in the past actually about like your mental resilience in in racing and the ability to dig deep. And like, I think it was when I sent you like one of those surveys about like how fast you can run, how strong you are, and it felt like you like outperformed those numbers in Hyrox, and your mental resilience was part of that. So presumably that came from that sort of elite level gymnastics as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. You definitely develop a toughness from a very young age, and you can definitely sit in a darker place than many, and kind of trust that your body can cope with that. Yeah.
yeah. I remember uh, your last race in Stockholm, and I'd commentated on it. And we don't normally commentate on the stage like we're normally somewhere else, but we were on the stage that day, and uh, I mean, it wasn't just you; it was a lot of the athletes. I was like they've really killed themselves, to get
Yeah.
to this finish line, and it was quite different. I felt to a normal event at Hyrox. Like, obviously, everyone's like suffering by that point, and sometimes, like, I think at the elites you see whatever Dylan Scott and sometimes Hunter like walk over the line and they look fine, but actually 95% of you guys are like really killed yourself. And I came and spoke to you, and you were just like gone, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. But it did stick with me. It was like, wow, like they've really dug deep here, at this point. Um, and it just made me think like there's levels to this in terms of how much you can dig. Did you have like sports psychologists when you were a gymnast at that sort of level?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we worked with sports psychologists quite a bit. Yeah, which has been really useful. I'm a massive fan of visualizing things and manifesting things. That's why I always kept a training diary. I think as well. Before every race. So when the course map came out, I'd literally sit every single day and imagine what I'd feel like on that start line, and not the people around me, but just the music, um, going through, calming myself down. I'd look at the race map and I'd be like, right, we're running around here. I'm coming in. I'm going through the ski, and then this is the pace I'm going at, and then I'm going to run out and like really visualize myself doing it, so that actually when you walked into an arena on race day, you kind of feel like you've already been there. You know the layout, you know where the ins and outs are, and has always been a very powerful thing. When I was a gymnast, it was like visualizing our routines, what like how you feel when you put your hand up to the judge and you go through each of those movements, and the stick in the landing. And yeah, I do that exactly the same for that Hyrox race, and imagining being in that arena, because obviously every course is different, so it's almost like really focusing in on that course. When it used to be The Greatest Showman in the start tunnel, I'd listen to that song on the way to the school with the kids and sing to it. I remember my first Elite 15 race at Maastricht, and that song was on, and I'm stood around like Meg is there, and like they're all quite tall, and I'm not tall. I was stood at the back with Miriam. It was my first one, so I certainly didn't feel like confident enough to stand on that front row. So I was stood at the back, and it came on, and I remember just thinking, well, on Monday morning I'll just be listening to this driving to school on the school run, and almost kind of just bring it back to a place where it's calm and it's okay, and thinking, right, actually my kids don't really care whether I come first or last. Life goes on after that, and almost really kind of putting it at a level like, just go and do your best, because in an hour's time it's going to be over. So
Yeah,
just all these little tricks to help you out. And I'd listen to the playlist that I was on at the Hyrox events when I was training. So you're kind of exposing yourself to all these things, so that on race day actually it didn't become too much. Your body was almost used to it.
yeah, yeah. How about like during the race? And I think it's around 18 months since we spoke on this podcast. It was before Manchester, the World Championships, and you said like during the race, your mind goes to like, "This is my fun." That's your
Yeah.
mantra. Did that? Is that something that stuck with you like ever since then? Is that mainly where your mind goes?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's very much a mental game, and it's just bringing it to like, I get to do this, I'm here because I want to do it, and changing that hard into a good thing. With every step, you're one step closer to that finish line. I draw a smiley face on my hand, so that when it did get hard, I could look down, and my kids also had a smiley face. And I think there's a psychology behind that. If you see a smile, it almost tricks you into thinking it's something like 20% easier. So all these little things, like just trying to bring out the fun in the race rather than focusing too much on the hard.
Yeah. Do you try and coach like your mental resilience into your athletes at all? Is this something that you talk to them about?
I do, yeah, absolutely. I actually sent a message out last night to them, the ones ahead of Birmingham, and I said, look, this is take a week now. The work's all been done. You can't do any more this week. All you can do now is just rest up, focus on the race, and enjoy the race. I mean, I said to them, like, the race is the fun bit. Like, the work's all within you. No matter what happens, stand on that start line, get your blinkers on, and just what paces you need to go, and just go and do yourself proud. And remember, says, you get to do this. You put yourself forward. I'm not telling you to do this. Your family's not telling you to do this. You get to be there. So go and enjoy it.
Yeah. Are you enjoying the coaching so far?
I am really enjoying it. Yeah, absolutely, I do. I have a nice balance. So I work with people on a one-to-one basis as well, or in a group setting, and I run a couple of classes. So I work with normal everyday people who don't have any performance goals, who just want to build in health and fitness into their lifestyle, and I find that very grounding. I think that's I always want to be able to do that work with kind of normal people, because I feel that on my online coaching, I only do Hyrox online. They're already motivated and committed and disciplined people, and they're not the true representatives of your average Joe. And I like to have the balance. So normally when you give somebody a program online, they're there, they tick it off, they get through it, and they're going to achieve it. And it is really nice to have that grounding of, these are like your everyday problems, and these are almost like your Hyrox problems. And I just feel that I've learned a lot in the last 3 years in Hyrox, and if I can help and support at least one person to do a better race and to enjoy it a little bit more through kind of focusing on the good side of racing over the hard side of racing, then that's positive.
You said you've learned a lot over the last few years. I was going to ask, like, has the coaching evolved? Like, say, is there anything you're doing differently now in training for your clients than you might have been doing 2 or 3 years ago? Do you feel like there's any elements that are more important than you initially realized, or less important?
Yes, yeah. I would say the thing that's changed the most is not just to train for Hyrox. So although you might just want to race in Hyrox, you've got no other kind of racing goals. I would say actually only a tiny bit of your training needs to be Hyrox focused. Actually, what you need to train for now is just to be a really good athlete. Just build the biggest base that you can build on. Are you making sure that you're doing strength training, or the push pulling moves, the carries, the lifts, core work? Build your aerobic base. Spend time on the ergs, spend time out running in various different ways, and actually only do Hyrox skills for a small proportion of the time. And maybe that might only be as well leading into an event. I think as well, we need to look at the season. It's a long season. It's like 9 months now, isn't it? Really, or even longer, really. Well, the UK season starting in October through to June. Like, you shouldn't really be trying to peak in Birmingham. Like, your long-term goal needs to be at the World Championships if you're wanting to go to the World Championships. But what does your season look like then? If you're entering 7 Hyrox races, you're not going to peak. You physically can't peak for all 7. So you need to decide what your A race is and what your B race is, and use some just as training runs, just to try out different strategies. But ultimately, you just want to be a really good athlete, all-round athlete, and then you can turn your hand at lots of other things. When I was watching Amsterdam, and they interviewed Lauren just before the race, and Lauren was interviewing Lauren, and she said, "How are you feeling?" And Lauren said, "Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm strong. I'm fit, but I don't know if I'm Hyrox fit." And I was like, "That's so true. Like, she doesn't need to be Hyrox fit right at the start of the season. She needs to be Hyrox fit at the end of the season in 9 months' time." But she's just a generally all-around good athlete. Like, she can do OCR. She's an awesome runner. She's strong. Obviously, she's got a CrossFit background. She's probably only just started doing Hyrox stuff in the last few weeks. Yet she's gone on and just smashed the major and hit a world record. Hopefully that will continue. So it's going to be an exciting season. So I think I definitely learned when I first started my first Birmingham race, I literally just followed the Hyrox workouts. That's all I was doing, Hyrox WODs every day of the week almost. Whereas like my last season was very much, I was doing very little Hyrox, and it was very much a lot more running focused and strength work and kind of like strength and conditioning stuff over just Hyrox.
Yeah. Funnily, like, I've been thinking the same actually recently after Amsterdam, because like I agree with you on Lauren's training, and JK I think is very similar. Like Ronkovic, I think is always ready. Like his like overall fitness for all elements of fitness is very good. I've spoken to Rylan Shadegg recently, which will be published soon, but again, he's very much of the opinion that you can do all sports and be ready for all sports, as opposed to, he certainly doesn't specifically just train for Hyrox, Yeah. And so even like those, they were 4 of the top 6 finishers in Amsterdam. And to be fair, I don't know, I couldn't speak for Megan or like Joanna so much, but maybe they're even falling into the same. But like that, there feels to be like a lack of specificity, if anything, amongst those top finishers as opposed to more, which I found quite interesting. But yeah, again, maybe it's like the time of the season that matters. Okay. What advice would you give to like younger athletes coming into Hyrox that want to make it to the elite level? And that can be in terms of like the performance and maybe just some of what you just talked about, but then also like longevity in the sport and injury prevention. You got any tips there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say see it as the long game, really, and try not to just overload massive volume into your training at such a young age, and try your hand at lots of different things. Like we said, just try and be a general all-around good athlete, and just find your fun. I think we can take things so seriously, and we put ourselves under so much pressure at times, and that can really kind of kill the love of competing and racing and training, really. Especially if I was 21 coming into this now, I'd be thinking very differently to how I am at 38, and I'd want to continue loving what I'm doing for all these years, and kind of not just put myself in one box. It would be very much kind of try lots of different things. But I think as well, don't try and rush. See it as a long-term commitment, and that you never know what's around the corner, and yeah, just look after yourself. Experience comes with time, and I almost feel as well, as we get older, we need to look after ourselves differently from it when we were 20 or were 21. As an older athlete, actually we probably need to be reducing the volume a little bit more, but rely on our experience of races and our past experience in sport, and have and manage those injuries and illnesses a little bit better. And how you train when you're older should be and is very different from how you train when you are younger.
Mm-hmm. Did your injury, like the management of your injury as you got more into Hyrox, did that make you rethink anything? Like, for example, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but like, were you like using a lot more bike as opposed to running, for example, and then finding that actually didn't adversely affect your performance at all? Like, was there anything like that going on?
Yeah, I did. I have a biker, a skier, and a rower at home. And I did a lot of volume work on that, and I like it massively helped to maintain just my overall general fitness levels. Yeah, 100%. And obviously, I think that's why I was able to get 3 solid years out of Hyrox and progress to a high level because I looked at other ways of being able to manage my knee injury. I also knew that I was limited on doing a lot of single leg work. So I know that is important in Hyrox, and I do coach my athletes to do a lot of high single leg work. But if they've got knee issues, then actually for me that caused quite a lot of pain and inflammation. So I did a lot of double leg work. So rather than doing heavy reverse lunges or heavy lunges, for me, it was very much around back squatting or leg extensions, hamstring works, focusing more on accessory stuff over heavy kind of the singles, because it's kind of managing your body's fatigue a lot, isn't it? What's going to give you the most bang for your buck so that you can continue to train and do well for the rest of the
Yeah.
week rather than putting yourself back. So it's not a one size fits all at all, and what works for one person won't work for another. And that's obviously where you need to work with a coach and to listen to your body. But I mean, there's ways around it. And as I know some of the other athletes, I think Michaela is struggling with her knee, and she's not doing much running or lower body strength work, but she does a lot of bike and a lot of assault bike and dual leg stuff just to keep the muscular endurance.
Do you remember what sort of running mileage or kilometers you were doing in advance of that Stockholm race? Do you remember where you were at
About
around then?
50 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah, so still a
Yeah.
decent amount, really. Yeah, but I did very little road running. A lot of my mileage was on treadmills,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
really helped. That
Okay.
really helped. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And did that mean that after a race you felt more beaten up than otherwise you might have? But
Yeah,
is that okay?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I needed a big deload straight after. I always remember the first race of every season is like you've been hit by a brick wall, but
Yeah.
then after that, you kind of almost you do get a bit better. But that first, I always dreaded that first race. It hurts.
Yeah, yeah. I always remember like my first football match of the season would be like so painful for like a week, really. It was
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, yeah. Um, did you enjoy watching the Elite 15 in
Oh,
Amsterdam?
I love watching it. Absolutely love watching it. I think as much as like it is a little bit sad that I can't race in it myself, but I'm a huge fan of the support, and I know the girls, and I want them to do well because I know what goes into this. It is a big commitment, and it is like it takes over your whole life, and it can go so easily well, and it can go so easily wrong all at the same time. So I felt the nerves for them, and I felt every bit of it. But amazing! I'm so excited for this season. It's so good seeing all these newcomers, these rookies that are coming in. I think a third of the field in the women's was new girls,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very exciting for the sport. It's only going to level everybody up. It won't be long before. Maybe even this year, we'll see, but it won't be long before the women are going sub 60.
Yeah, 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 yeah. What's your feeling on like now you're sort of out of it a little bit? What's your feeling on like the evolution of the qualifying process, the coverage, like the sponsorships that are coming in? Do you feel like it's all heading in the right direction?
Really is heading in the right direction. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the more that investors can come in, the better it'll take the pressure off the athletes because they'll be able to dedicate more time to the support, to training, to recovery, to travel. There's a big expectation on these athletes to literally travel all over the world. It's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of money traveling to all these places. It was amazing, and I absolutely would do it again. But is a big commitment. You know, it's Amsterdam, it's Hong Kong, it's Vegas, it's Glasgow, and then Chicago again. That's a lot. That's a lot of expense. So the more sponsorship that can come in and support the athletes, that's only going to improve, and hopefully entice other athletes from other sports to come across as well, because there is going to be money in the sport for it. Obviously, the more coverage, especially in the UK, we love our Hyrox here. So it would be nice to maybe start making sure that some of the home races, not just the elites, were filmed, maybe even if just the pro races, and have them on. Obviously, the more communication and the more that Hyrox racing can be seen, the better for the community. And yeah, it's got to be positive. I mean, it's all snowballing very quickly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you like?
and
Do you
I
like?
think as well, sorry, I was just about to say, and I think the new format of having, you've got to have two up-to-date races for that qualifying, that's only fair, surely, because obviously I've not trained in 6 months, and that I could have qualified, I could have gone, my name was still in the mix for Amsterdam. Well, that's not fair on people who have trained throughout the summer and wanting a spot. You know, I'm not relevant, whereas they are. So keeping those times up to date means that you are getting to see the best of the best. And I think the only thing I would change, and I'm not sure how they would potentially do this, would be to have a blank sheet at the start of every season, so that you don't get those automatic places in. Like, people have to race to get in those races. You know, like in every other sport, everything goes back to zero and everything resets. It's almost like we're kind of still in Hyrox, kind of still thinking back to the previous season. So I think maybe having a complete reset button would be interesting.
So you mean the times being based on the last 365 days should really restart at the start of the season? Okay. How about in terms of how the athletes are approaching the race at Elite 15 level? Do you feel like that's evolved at all over the last couple of years? And maybe it hasn't, but like from my perspective on the men's side, like they're going out quicker. You almost have to be like in contention at the sled pull, really, if you want to go on to win the race. Would you agree with that? And do you feel like there's anything else that's evolved in terms of the athlete approach to a race?
I think definitely a strategy. You know where you're good at individually. This is, you know, which events you can push at and where you need to pull back on a little bit. I think we're all very much aware a lot more now that it is a runner's game and how important running is. And if you aren't a good runner, then unfortunately you are going to suffer. You can't just be good at stations. That the running is going to make the most difference. I think as well, looking at some of the stats as well, is the burpees seem to have a big impact on the race itself. So the better you are at burpees, it almost seems to, and farmers carry a little bit as well, that you are going to hit those top spots a little bit. So everybody definitely needs to be doing a lot more burpees than they are doing. I saw an interesting thing about a sled comparison as well, and I think I'm not really sure the way forward in it, but it just seems that sometimes the sleds are very fast, well, like they were in Amsterdam, and then a week later in Milan, people were almost getting double their sled time from what they did before. So I'm not sure how to improve that, but I do feel that it definitely needs to try and get as standardized as possible, especially if we're racing off times.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, fantastic. There's a few questions I'd like to finish up with. So the first one, what's been your best ever sporting experience?
I think it's got to be from when I was a gymnast. I was British champion for five years, and I got to compete in the European Championships and the World Championships, and I just think the whole but the whole thing, although it was very hard as a gymnast, it shaped me into the person that I am. So I owe a lot to gymnastics, and I certainly don't feel like I would have been the Hyrox athlete I am without having that experience.
Yeah. How about your toughest ever sporting experience?
It's got to be dealing with injury, and I've dealt with injury, like I say, from the age of 6. And as much as the physical pain is there, I think it's very much a mental battle with everything. I think this year in particularly, one thing that I've really struggled with this year is making that switch, going from I'm training for a performance purpose, so this is my training plan and program. Whereas now I've not got a performance goal and I'm limited to what I can really do in my knee, making that switch to, well, what's the point in even going for a 30-minute walk? What's the point in even doing a small strength session because I'm not lifting the numbers, or I'm not trying to hit those big weights or those big lifts that I am? But actually now it's, well, who do you want to be in 10, 20, 30 years time? Yeah, you might not be training for performance right now, but actually you're training for longevity and to be a healthy, happy, strong human, and being the best that you can be right now. And that's one thing that I have struggled with this year, is making that switch, that and actually realizing that it does count. Every
Mm-hmm.
little bit counts, and actually the consistency will, the action, and then the motivation will all come through that. And I think that's I think with every lesson, or with everything that comes up with a lesson, and it's grounding me to be able to work with a lot of the clients that I work with now, and actually seeing it from their point of view of, yeah, it is hard to not see that much change in the way that you look or want to work out, but it is still important. Every little bit is important. So yeah, I'm in a lot better place than I was. So I would definitely say dealing with injury is hard.
And you're training for the next sport that you don't know about yet, that
Don't
you're
know
going to
about,
reach.
yeah, exactly. I've got to be ready at all times.
Next sport to be elite at. How about the best piece of advice someone's given you or you've discovered while training for Hyrox?
Don't just train for Hyrox. That absolutely, and I've definitely discovered that over the 3 years. It went from being very just Hyrox specific and doing nothing else to actually Hyrox may only make up one of your sessions a week, but actually having specific strength work, having specific erg work, having specific running sessions, conditioning, trying not just lifting kettlebells, but working with balls, with sandbags, doing lots of things so that you are ready to turn your hand at everything. So yeah, although you might just be Hyrox focused, but aim to be the best athlete that you can be.
Yeah, right. And then the last one, if you could plant one idea or piece of advice in the mind of everyone listening, and it can be anything, what would it be?
It would be to eat the frog. And this and this is one thing that I always say to my athletes as well, is eat the frog. And the concept behind that is do one thing every day or every week that makes you feel uncomfortable, or makes you, that is hard and you don't want to do, and do it first. And how I applied that in my training was, I really didn't like doing those longer grindy runs on the treadmill or interval session. That's the session I hated, that's the session that I didn't like to do, but it made the most impact. So every Monday morning I would get up, I'd be on the treadmill at 5:30, and I'd eat the frog. I'd get that session over and done with. And everything else that I did that week, I knew I could do, because I stood up and I got up and I got it done first, and I accomplished it, got that ticking. So I always say, get the hard done first, do the hard work, it's done, and then you can move on and enjoy the rest of the week.
Love it. Awesome. All right. All right, perfect. Thank you for this. It's been great. Obviously, you're sorely missed at the Elite 15 level, but it's good to talk and good to see you're still involved in some ways. If people want to find out more about you, find out more about your coaching, where should they go?
On Instagram. So it's just Beck Mason PT.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, thank you. I'll see you in Birmingham.
See you in Birmingham. Thanks, Greg.